Bonsoir, mes amis. Welcome back to Monaco. Last time we got to see the extent of the gentleman's fabulous criminal empire. This time, let's go back to where the lovers first met. I'm a little bit wary of introducing too many possible plot points at the end of everything because, well, it runs the risk of muddling the waters. But still, there's a lot of possibilities that I think are pretty interesting to consider that, everything's possible. It's possible that the locksmith isn't lying. Now, based on everything we've seen so far, that seems pretty far-fetched, but consider this. The reason the locksmith, the pickpocket, the lookout, and the cleaner are in prison, according to the locksmith, is because the gentleman and his crew betrayed them. Why then would the four thieves break out of prison? Well, according to the locksmith, it's because it's in their nature. It would make perfect sense to me for a batch of criminals to steal something just because they could, which would go a long way towards explaining why exactly it is they robbed the gentleman's assets on the way out of prison, an identity. Of course, that's taking the assumption that identity doesn't take place as the pickpocket says it does. Though there haven't been four criminals all along. It's just been, well, the pickpocket does like to embellish a little bit, so identity may be a little bit over the top. The main downside I see to that, then, is why would the locksmith and his crew be following in the gentleman's footsteps? It doesn't make any sense that you would find these little bits of evidence of where the criminals have been at all of their origins places if, like the locksmith said, they were betrayed by the gentleman and they have no reason to hold any loyalty to him. That's just the plot hole I see on that point. Though, if you take the other point of view, what if the pickpocket's telling the truth? That one, I believe, holds a little bit more weight.
Arrête-toi, voleur!
If the pickpocket is telling the truth, it's in his best interest to stay close to the gentleman. Since he's already one of Interpol's assets, if the gentleman has to be brought in or reined in, the pickpocket, being a Interpol asset, will be invaluable in tracking him down. It could be the pickpocket is just tagging along with the group for the sake of his handlers, right? After all, he's a fine, upstanding person. He wouldn't lie to anybody, right? Well, maybe not. We've had a lot of reason to distrust the pickpocket and his take on events. The biggest thing to consider is who are these stories being told for the benefit of? Are they being told for the benefit of the police? Well, that one I'm not so sure about. The only member of the police force we've had constant interaction with throughout the storylines has been Inspector Voltaire. I suppose my question then is, well, who's Inspector Voltaire? Presumably, Inspector Voltaire works closely with Interpol, if he does not work directly for Interpol. He has contacts with Interpol at the very least, and he knows that the gentleman is a criminal mastermind of sorts. He's definitely a person of interest to Interpol. This is why he's so interested and surprised when he finds out that the pickpocket has been an asset on the gentleman this entire time, if that is indeed the truth.
Tant pis. Vous n'avez rien à faire ici.
But Inspector Voltaire seems very interested in all of these events. You could chalk that up to, obviously, Inspector Voltaire is a fine, upstanding citizen, doing his duty to rid the world of criminals, etc. and so on, but what if things are a bit more sinister than that? What if Inspector Voltaire has ties to this as well? I'd like to consider that there's the possibility that Inspector Voltaire isn't exactly on the up and up. What if... well, there's a lot of different what ifs here. I've mentioned before, one of the mysteries I've always had about this game is what exactly happens to David. David is a central, though not seen character in both storylines, but... well, after the club, after the discotheque, he just disappears. What if, and this is a long shot mind you, what if Inspector Voltaire is David? This could tie somewhat into the locksmith's original story of, well, David is the gentleman's enemy, he wants to get rid of his enemies, right? That holds water to a certain extent, except that David is a fairly well-known public persona. He's the CEO of a major company. It doesn't necessarily make sense that David would be able to rise to the position of being the CEO of Securitech and have time to be moonlighting as an Interpol inspector.
Y a quelqu'un? Arrête-toi, voleur!
Something I'd like to consider, although I haven't put a considerable amount of thought in, is what if the pickpocket and his crew of 4 or 5, depending on your view of it, what if they're trying to take over the gentleman's criminal empire? After all, the gentleman's a well-known criminal, but what if the pickpocket, the cleaner, the lookout, and the locksmith are all trying to take his shtick? What if they're all trying to muscle in on his business, so to speak? It could be possible, then, that Inspector Voltaire is the gentleman, trying to figure out just who it is that's trying to invade his criminal empire. After all, Inspector Voltaire seems to be able to pick up on these locations that the lookout pointed him in pretty well. Maybe he has a extra deep insight into the criminal mind. Or I suppose it's entirely possible that I'm making things up. I won't deny that. Still, if any of these things are the case, I suppose it raises the inevitable question of, well, to what point? You can do all these daring and dastardly things and have everything going on, but what's the point? What's the outcome? For the pickpocket, if he is trying to overtake the gentleman's criminal empire, well, I suppose, well, the pickpocket's always been a fan of getting rich, right? and presumably he used to be a bank manager according to the lookout. He's just evening the scales. If, and this is a big if Inspector Voltaire is the gentleman, well, he gets to rub out another criminal threat to his empire. And if David is Inspector Voltaire, well, same concept. He gets to remove one more threat to his vision of security for all of Monaco. But that's just heavy theorizing. This level, as you may be able to tell, is a retread of the original redhead level, rather, for Origins, wherein we played the blonde and we had to run around avoiding machine gun guards, or at least getting their attention and then playing a spirited game of keep away. The first floor with the safe on the table is where we did most of that, but once we get up to the second and third floor, I would say the heaviest security you'll find is up here in the master bedroom. Mostly because there's a good number of lasers. The guards are easy enough to deal with. There's a pretty decent number of lines of sight you can break if need be, and if you break a laser, you usually have at least one get-out-of-jail-free card, so to speak. The first guard that responds to the laser being tripped will usually be charmed by the redhead. More often than not, this gives you a little bit of time to respond, because it takes the next guard maybe about 3 to 5 seconds to respond to the alarm going off. The biggest problem with the master bedroom is that you have all the different deposits of money sitting around. You have the safe sitting on the table in front of the bed, and there's 3 jewelry boxes. One next to the rotating laser, and, well, one on the other side of the rotating laser, rather, and the 2 in the upper right here. They don't exactly open themselves. Still, what this boils down to is being able to move quickly and use your resources to the best of your ability. It's very important that you grab all the money up on this helipad, because at one point I did accidentally miss a piece and wrench my way into the helicopter, and I had to redo this level. So, please join me next time.